Hello and welcome to the Edit Undo podcast. Today is a very special episode because we don't actually have a guest. Today is a team episode. So to start off, we'll just quickly go around the room, introduce ourselves. You'll be meeting somebody new today. As you know, I'm Alfie.
Hey guys, welcome back. I'm Stephanie.
I'm James.
Great. Steph, do you want to take us away?
Yeah. So we thought it would be a good idea to maybe get to know us and what we do every single day, what we do when we're not doing the podcast. So maybe, Alfie, can you give everyone listening just a brief background about who you are, what you do, and where you're from?
So, in terms of what I do, I am a product designer at the moment. I started in graphic design, doing a little bit of freelance work while I was still in between varsity and the rest of my life. And then I moved on into UX in a digital team at an advertising agency. And now I'm kind of doing product design at Free Thinking for 2 more days. And then I'll be moving on to new adventures. But yeah, that's a story.
Where are you going?
Yes. So I'm going to, I was about to say that's a story for another day, but I'm going to IoT Next. They are a Internet of Things company. So they focus on smart technology and sort of other,
pretty cool.
yeah, I guess platforms in that realm of things. And that's pretty cool because kind of after working in banking for so long, 2.5 years these days is so long. but after kind of being in banking, it's kind of good. I'm excited to be working on things that are actually cutting edge technology. Well, cutting edge, I guess anything compared to banks these days is cutting edge. But yeah, that's going to be really interesting. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. But then also at the same time, it's still a pretty small design practice with a very big dev team. So it's going to be a little bit hectic.
Interesting. Yeah.
But I guess a bit about my background. My family's originally from Kenya. We moved here right before I was born. So my older brother was born that side. I was born here in South Africa. I schooled in Pretoria. Never really did too well at school, pretty much. Well, actually, in primary school and half of high school, I was doing pretty well. I somehow managed to get a scholarship in high school, which to this day, I still didn't. And I got the highest academic scholarship. And I was never...
And then puberty hit.
I think so, because I don't think I was ever even in the top 10. Yeah, so... I guess sometimes they get a drop. But yeah, eventually, I did manage to eventually get through. At the end of high school, I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do professionally, and I still had my eyes set on being a gamer. And I guess that's kind of how I've ended up so tied into all things computers. But eventually, I studied multimedia at Tux. I just scraped in, fortunately. And I guess it was a sign from there. If I barely managed to get in, there was no chance I was going to get completely through. But in my second year, I did a little some work experience at ABSA in the June-July holiday, which I have to say I absolutely recommend to anybody that is in varsity or that is a student at the moment. If you can, do work experience. Find a family member, approach a stranger if you have to. But the amount of learnings that you get from actually being in a workplace and actually seeing what a person does in their job from a day-to-day basis is priceless. Because, you might think, I'm going to go and work for, let's say, Google, and my job is going to be amazing. But, you could just be a person that does a very boring job at Google. Your job might just be looking after a specific server, and that's the sum total of what you do. And when you think about it from a hypothetical perspective, it seems, Google, this is going to be amazing. I'm going to be doing all of these cutting edge things. But at the end of the day, your experience at a company really depends on your job and the team that you work in. So actually getting that real life experience of seeing what a person in your specific area does is super useful. It's worth, I would even say, more than another year and a half of studying. And so for me, that's kind of what I managed to do. I did I was forced into a month of work experience at ABSA, which I mean, I wasn't getting paid for, and I was using the train. So in a sense, I was paying to work at ABSA.
Oh gosh, just like the bank wants it.
Exactly. But it changed my life.
Pay us to keep your money and take your money.
Exactly. Pay us to make money off your money. But yeah, it really changed direction for me because I realized that I'd found something that I could actually do. Because I mean, I had no idea where my life was going, even 2.5 years into my degree. I was still like completely lost. I had no idea what I wanted to kind of my career to be. But actually having seen it, I realized that all of those hours I'd spent gaming could actually be put to use. And so I eventually started working at an advertising agency in the digital team doing user experience design. And that was an amazing experience for me. Just because it was like, it felt like the first time I was being, I guess I always had the feeling that like school was like pretend and it had like fake rules. And like actually being in the workspace was like moving into reality and like you actually get the ways you get tested are not like arbitrary and the results that you actually put out are how you get measured. So like pretty much from day one, like I enjoyed the experience of working and I sort of thrived in it. And I guess, yeah, everything else is history.
So you got through 2.5 years of varsity and then decided not to finish it, even though you were just a few months away.
I'd been there for 2.5 years, but I wasn't finishing in 6 months. I definitely, like, I think I had failed at least, and that was the thing. I failed a semester where it added a year, so I was just like, I can't do another year of this.
Fine.
Not a chance. Yeah. But I mean, even if I just had the 6 months, I probably still would have just left and kind of moved on because
sure.
Yeah, as soon as I did that work experience at ABSA, I knew that like I could already do it and I would enjoy it much more. And like I was already in such a dark place being in varsity and hating it for so long that any out was the best strategy for me.
James, you literally just finished varsity. Did you hate it as much as Alfie, or did you actually enjoy it?
Yeah, there were definitely some downsides, but it was still like what I was able to study and like the opportunity I got was just amazing, and like I never took it for granted. And it was like the things I've learned in the last 3 years have just like changed my life, literally. Yeah.
So where did you study?
So I was born in Durban, but then I studied at SAE in Cape Town, and I'm now based in Cape Town as well, which is also quite nice. But yeah, the sound industry is pretty interesting. I guess I'm only like really starting to get into it now. But I've done a bit of live sound work, which is pretty cool. I'm super interested in audio post side of things. Yeah, but it's pretty crazy. Like at the end of high school, I had no idea what I was going to study. And then it turned out that sound engineering was a thing you could study. So I was sort of like, okay, this is the route I'm taking. But it was always going to be something music related.
Okay.
So I'm glad.
So were you doing music?
I was about to ask.
Yeah, so literally like my whole life's been based around music. I started playing drums when I was like, as long as I can remember, I played drums. And then I play a bit of guitar as well. But yeah, drums is and still will be my life.
How many instruments can you play?
So I play drums. I used to play a bit of piano and I play some guitar. that's pretty much it. So not
That's
too
3
much.
more than me.
Same.
Yeah, I also play in 2 bands, which have already started lifting off recently.
Oh,
Which is quite
awesome.
fun
Really
as well. Yeah. So they're obviously being based in Cape Town as well, and playing in a band is quite crazy because Durban there's just nothing happening, but then in Cape Town it's just all the time and nonstop, and so many venues to choose from. So that's been cool as
What
well.
are the 2 bands' names that you're playing in?
So the one band's called Girls on Form, and the other band is like this. She was originally like a singer-songwriter, but then she wanted to go the band route, and that's called Where Are the Crystals?
Where Are the
I
Crystals?
feel like you need to send us links.
Yeah, we don't have anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we don't have anything recorded at the moment, but we play a lot live.
Oh, that's so cool.
Which is very, very fun.
Well, when I come down to Cape Town now in a few days, if you guys are playing anywhere over the festive season, let me know and I'll definitely come check it out.
Yeah, so we had to take a bit of a break now because I'm at home in Durban.
Yes, of course.
But I'll be back in Cape Town soon next year.
We'll definitely come down to see you play sometime. That would be super cool.
Yeah.
I actually had a question. So I guess you kind of mentioned that sound like you've always been interested in music, and then you sort of figured out that you can do sound engineering. But like, at what point did you sort of realize that this is something that I want to make a career more than just something that I want to study or something that I'm interested in?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I mean, like in first year, it was like the things I was learning about like music mixing and stuff. It just like changes your whole perspective about like how I listen to music. It's like, I guess it's the same as like if you're working behind the scenes in like movies or whatever. There's like so much magic that like actually goes into it. So I think it was at that point where I sort of realized it's like it's not all just about music. There's like so much more that goes into it, and like there's like a lot of creativity involved. But then sort of in second year, we were like introduced more to like the audio post side of things, like the sound design. And that's when it like really took off. And I was like, okay, mixing is cool, but like audio post is just like, it's like a whole nother ball game. And like doing sound from like understanding like how sound is done for like movies and TV shows is just like crazy. So yeah, that was quite a game changer as well.
To be honest, I definitely did not have an appreciation for recording or sound and editing until we started this podcast. Didn't know it could be this intense.
Yeah.
It's like quite a deceptive practice, I feel, because there's like there really is like a lot that goes into like the music industry alone, as well as like the post industry. And,
I do feel that's kind of the case for most creative industries.
Definitely.
It's very, underappreciated, misunderstood. I mean, if you look at any, like an artist or a sound engineer or a designer or a photographer, like when we spoke to Brandon as well, hearing about the challenges and just the general life of being a fashion photographer, dabbling with the briefs of corporates, the shot they want. And that's the struggles we as creatives have to face.
Definitely more than just me. Brandon's not just snapping some pictures and putting them on Instagram.
But I guess one thing I think also, and maybe I realize I don't have a good enough appreciation for this, but like when I think about the scoring in movies, like I'm the type to like I'm extremely story focused. So when I'm watching a TV show or a series or pretty much anything that has got a narrative, I focus so much on the narrative that the scoring just bleeds into the background. And like, I'll go to a movie with someone and we watch a movie and we come out and they're like, yo, the score in that movie was amazing. Like, I don't even...
What do you mean the score?
The music.
Oh, flip. Not familiar with that term.
Yeah, that's kind of, I guess, what they call... Unless I'm getting it wrong. I could be getting it.
But there's... No, definitely the score. But it's like even with like the sound design and stuff, I feel like it's like the less you notice it,
the better.
Like
Yes.
the better the
Yeah.
job has been
But I
done.
feel like that with the music, and then some people are like, "Yo, the score of that movie was amazing." Like it would just like set the scene, and I'm like, "Yo, I don't even remember. I don't even remember when the songs were playing, let alone any of the songs they played. Like usually, the only song I remember is the song that plays during the credits, and that's just because there's nothing on the screen."
Alfie, I'm not
Yo, I
surprised.
One of my favorite things to do is to like watch a movie and then but I feel like I'm the same as well. It's like I don't really like the score doesn't really stand out, but then I go and like I listen to the soundtrack album and it's just like it's like completely different experience to like watching it and it's just beating into the background like you said. Yeah.
Definitely.
No,
But yeah, soundtracks
I'm one of
are
those people that sit with Shazam or SoundHound during a movie or a series and just make my playlist as I'm listening.
That's hilarious. Okay, well, Steph, I guess let's hear where you started out because I think I actually don't really know that much about like you pre-professional life, so it'll be quite interesting to get to know a little bit of the backstory.
I think I'm the opposite of you. If I think back to school and varsity, I was such a little goody two-shoe performer. I did really well in school. And I kind of knew exactly where I wanted to go. I took arts immediately from the beginning of high school, and then mid high school, I had the option to choose design or art, and I picked design. I wouldn't call that subject design, though. It was basically just art 2.0. And then I think already second last year, so grade 11 of high school, I already went to the open day of Open Window where I studied and enrolled. Knew I wanted to study there. So just kind of graduated. I really wanted to get a bursary. So I really pushed in high school, got good marks, but somehow still when I got to Open Window, the year I applied for, they decided not to give bursary. So I just worked my butt off for nothing.
Sure.
Then when I started at varsity, I originally majored in visual communication, aka graphic design. But then thankfully, part of our curriculum is forced work experience internships. So in my second year majoring, did an internship at a big digital agency called Aqua Online. They're not with us anymore, unfortunately, but they had big accounts like Mercedes-Benz. So I got an internship there through a family friend somewhere. And I remember like arriving, sitting in reception, and obviously because it's now the internship I got through a friend. It's not an official internship program, so no one really had a plan for me. So I was sitting in reception for about, I think it was at least 3 hours, and then one of the reception ladies walked me to the design section and just put me there in a chair. So I opened, just did some varsity work. And then there was a girl there, Melody, and she's like my mentor. I see her still as my career mentor. She was in the interaction design team, and they were busy with the tablet version for the campaign website of the Mercedes-Benz vans. So how you like on the tablet flip and change the customization of the Mercedes-Benz vans. And she gave me a bit of work to do, and I went back to varsity and decided to double major instead and stayed an extra year and studied for my fourth year to major in two things then, visual communication and interaction design. And then I was fortunate enough to land a good first job afterwards at a big international agency, Ogilvy, South Africa. And it was exciting, a nice international big job. But turns out I was not cut out for agency or advertising. The 10 a.m. tequila trolley did not appeal to me. So I decided to quit my job at Ogilvy after 11 months and immediately start freelancing to get more into UX and UX research specifically. And since then, it's been about 4 years. Been doing a lot of freelance work for startups. I would say that's where my big passion would be, working with a lot of entrepreneurs, learning from different industries. When COVID happened, I was in Vietnam. Busy traveling, already been there for a month and a bit. And then I was still supposed to stay there for another, I think, 4 weeks or so. But then Emirates phoned me to say last flight out to South Africa. Don't know what's going to happen with COVID. So I came back to South Africa, moved back in with my parents because it was locked down. And I didn't have anywhere to live at that time. I was traveling. And I got the opportunity to start working at a bank. And I think pre-COVID, I would have never even considered that opportunity, just because working in a big office or for a big corporate, driving into an office every day was not a life I saw for myself. But with COVID, it was completely remote. And it's been a year and a few months now working for APSA and the mobile banking team. And it's been an incredible opportunity and experience. I would have never had the opportunity to learn design at scale, how to work in a team of 32 designers and manage a design system that's so big our Figma file crashes. If anyone from Figma is listening, please help us. So yeah, that's kind of where I am now.
Yeah, and I think I've said this before, but there's one thing I'm grateful for COVID about is kind of getting you to actually work for a big bank and eventually leading up to you and I starting this podcast. Because I think like without COVID, you'd probably have never worked on the bank. We probably never have met. And this podcast would still just be a pipe dream. So
exactly, yeah.
Silver linings.
It's crazy. Yeah.
It's fate, destiny.
Mm-hmm. So I have.
How have you guys found like remote, like working remotely now as opposed to I think it's a bit different if you like freelancing stuff, but like I don't know if Alfie was like if you were going in every day.
Struggled to get used to remote work. I struggle so much. Like I'm super people focused. I love chatting. Like I want to kind of like brainstorm ideas on a whiteboard, and all of that just disappeared. Like with the flip of a switch. So kind of getting used to this new like environment, having to set up every single meeting, because I was also the type of person to attend the meetings that somebody told me about and forget to reply to emails. And I still forget to reply to emails now, but I'm better than I used to be. So it was kind of like quite a big shift for me. But I mean, I think I'm better for it now that it's the other side, because I suspect that when we do eventually go back to in-person work, like some of these skills that I've learned out of necessity will kind of remain with me. So all in all, it was challenging, but I kind of figured it out after a while. Yeah. Steph?
I think so pre-COVID for about almost 2 years, I worked mostly remote, about 80% remote. But it was very different to remote now. It was me traveling while I worked, or if I was in Johannesburg, I would be working at coffee shops or Cape Town coffee shops. So for me, still, my preference of remote work is somewhere being a stranger in a crowd. So being surrounded by people, but not having to talk to them. So it was quite tough for me in the midst of COVID to work from home. It's sitting in one place is not something I'm good at.
Okay.
And yourself, James, like I think because you actually did the online studying. How was that?
Oh,
Yeah. So yeah, that was pretty shit. Because so last year we like varsity sort of closed down just before like the country went into like the actual lockdown. So I came home and then didn't hear anything from our varsity for a while, and then they started some remote learning because obviously like my degree was so like practical. We can't really be like working on a sound desk over Zoom or whatever. So it was pretty. That was so that it felt like the 2 or 3 months were just like such a waste. Even though we got to do like some of the theoretical stuff. Then when we got back to back to varsity at the end of second year, it was like so intense. Like we had to like fit so much stuff in. So that was like pretty cool because then it was just like so condensed.
sure. Yeah.
But yeah, I sort of feel like second year was a bit of like a hit and miss because of COVID, unfortunately. So like these 3 years have like flown by so fast, and I've partially blamed COVID of it. Yeah, but it was still cool. Yeah.
All right.
I guess that's prepared you a little for if you were to now, enter a job that is still kind of remote, because a lot of companies have now shifted to a remote model or semi-hybrid model. So at least that's equipped you with the tools. That's not something new that you'll have to then try and how to articulate my profession into a digital or remote space.
Yeah, I definitely agree. There are definitely some positives like, from that aspect. Yeah.
So, guys, I don't think this is going to be a super long episode today, but I do have a question that I would like each of us to answer. So, I mean, we are starting a podcast, and I guess each of us have got a few people who we would really like to speak to over the course of this podcast's existence. So let's maybe go around the room and kind of identify maybe 2 or 3 of our dream guests that we'd actually like to be able to contact at some point in our lives. And actually, I'll even, to make it a little bit more interesting, I'd say alive or dead. Or one alive at least.
I find this question so hard. I've always been very vague with where I want to be in life and what I want to do. Like, my goals aren't very concrete. They're more based on experience rather than outcome. So if I had to answer that, I would rather think about my favorite companies. I'm actually, sadly, probably a very bad designer because I can't actually name big aspiring designers in my space.
Me neither, don't worry.
So a dream guest for me would be a user experience designer that works for Lululemon. If you guys don't know, Lululemon is a big yoga and sports brand in the United States. Massive. Very expensive sports clothing. I have the privilege of owning a few pieces by taking out credit cards to afford it in my South African rands. But they have their brand, their quality, their app, their websites. I've always been obsessed. That's the only job alert I have on LinkedIn is if there's UX positions that come up for Lululemon. And then I'll get discount on clothes. So
it's actually really just about the clothes, not really the job.
I love the brand and the brand loves me.
All right.
And it's linked to yoga, so it just all makes sense to me.
James?
Yo, I don't know. Recently, I've been like very interested in like the crypto sphere, like cryptocurrencies. So I think like an NFT designer or someone would be pretty cool. But then again, I was also thinking some crazy sound designer, but I think like Steph, I can't really name drop too many people in my industry.
I actually know someone who we could get on the show, which would be cool for you. But I'm not going to say their name just yet. I'll
Yeah.
tell you off air.
No, they
Okay.
decline.
Okay.
No, I don't think
Okay.
that the decline.
cool.
I just don't know when would be a good time to do it, because it's kind of one of those ones that you want to use sparingly. Yeah,
I see. Yeah.
Cool.
Is he
yeah,
like a
they're
sound
probably like
designer?
the biggest producers in South Africa.
Jeez.
Oh, wow,
Okay.
And it's crazy because I met them at my last. It's
Okay.
yeah, that last company I worked for was such an interesting place. Like they had just a group of producers in the same office as us, and like their studio is there. So like every now and then we just have like Shoma Josie would just be at the office, or like yeah.
Yeah.
So that was always that was a super interesting experience outside of the late nights and way
Yeah.
too much alcohol.
Cool. Alfie, you? What's your dream guest?
So I have one of them. Many people are kind of like either not at all for him or kind of for him or like really for him. But Gary Vaynerchuk, he is a
Nope.
hectic. Okay, well he's like a super big social media guy. He like runs an agency
Yeah.
in the US. But he's like immigrant, kind of like from, I think he's from Belarus, and kind of started like grew he first run his family business and like grew it like 20 times its size, and then started his own agency and became like super super big. And like especially during my varsity time, he really influenced me. And I remember like one video I watched when I was considering dropping out of varsity, where he was actually speaking about that, and that video kind of like helped me make that decision. So there have been a few kind of like turnkey moments, kind of following him. And then another one is a designer called Christo, and he's got this YouTube channel called The Future, and that's where I first started learning how to do UX. Like he's got this YouTube playlist called, I think it's called like "What is UX Design" or something like that, and that's how I kind of got into the industry. So like,
Interesting. Okay.
Those two for me would be like iconic.
Your anonymous digital mentors.
Exactly. Like my user experience journey has been, 99% just looking at what people do online, copying it, and like practicing and doing online stuff and watching tons and tons of YouTube videos. So yeah, there are a few people that would be super cool for me to speak to. And then there is actually a third one. And this guy is just super inspiring because he's just crazy. So there's this guy called Idris Sandu. He's from Ghana, if I'm not mistaken. And I think like he's a year or two older than me. But he did an internship at Google, I think when he was like 17. I think between 17 and 19. He, in Snapchat, the geo tagging map feature thing. Did you ever use Snapchat?
No.
Okay. Well, anyway, he sort of conceptualized that. So he's consulted for Snapchat, Uber, Google, Instagram, and then he's also started his own thing called Spatial Labs, where he's kind of created this. It's kind of like an interface or an operating system, but that uses your camera and kind of tracks movement and lets you interact just by hand movements, just in the air.
Yeah.
So you could and so the thing that's super, even more crazy about him, and I guess this is where my hip hop side of things kind of bleed in. There's this rapper called Nipsey Hussle, super inspiring guy. But he's like, the thing that's I guess a bit different about him is he like his first million was made from a clothing store. So he's like a thoroughbred entrepreneur, and then he's just also a musician over and above that. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago. Well, he was killed. But the thing that was super super interesting about him is like, so Idris Sandu tells this story where he was kind of like sitting in a Starbucks working on this software that kind of lets you the Spatial Lab software, and then this dude kind of like walks into the Starbucks. This is Nipsey Hussle. Like, so at this point, he's a big rapper. Like, people know his name and all of that. And Idris is this kind of like just this random kid. And so Idris speaks like, he kind of walks past him the first time going to the bathroom. And then he comes out of the bathroom again. And then he walks past him again and goes to the bathroom and walks. And eventually he kind of like taps Idris on the shoulder and he's like, I'm looking at your screen and I'm seeing things that I've never seen before. And so then eventually they start talking about the software and they start talking about how they want to essentially like create a space for, especially for African Americans and the people in their community to essentially be able to have access to technology and essentially step themselves up. And eventually, this Idris Sandu guy joins Nipsey Hussle's team as a chief technology officer. I have never seen a rapper with a CTO. And so, like for me, like that relationship was super cool. And I guess because I'm kind of in the tech field and I've got a few friends in the music industry, like I guess there's a little bit of resonance from that perspective. Yeah.
That's
Interesting story.
So hip hop's obviously your thing, Alfie. What sort of music are you into, Steph? Because that's always like the question I love to ask.
Just like everything else, very everywhere. I like change, so it ranges from like dubstep, EDM to very indie, slow indie depro. Yeah, all the way to instrumental to meditation music.
Okay,
and James, I feel like you need to say something really profound here.
So I used to be like super into like a lot of extreme metal and stuff like that, and I still am to a degree, but I sort of realize there's like a lot more to music than just like metal and stuff.
Lots noises.
So yeah. So now I listen to anything rock. I love Arcade Fire and Pearl Jam, stuff like that. The 90s was amazing. But yeah, pretty much anything rock and metal related.
Yeah. I'm also a big old school fan, 80s, 70s.
Yeah, I was fortunate since I've seen Foo Fighters and Guns N' Roses when I went to Joburg when they came. So that was pretty cool.
I've seen The Cure live.
Oh wow! Did you see them in? Was that in?
No,
Cape
that
Town?
was here in Joburg.
Okay.
Just before COVID, the September before COVID. Yeah.
You know, the funny thing is, even though I guess I've got a bit of a hip hop streak, my taste is also all over the place. Like, I mean, I had a good like year, maybe even a little bit more when I was super into One Direction.
That's very unexpected.
I know. My taste in music is all over the place. Like
I don't even know One Direction.
I've been like, I was super into dubstep for a while. Like, yeah, I've been all around the block and back. Yeah. But I guess music is kind of like that. Each of them speak to a different like
phase in your life. Yeah.
Yeah, literally.
Exactly.
Yeah, the constant evolution. Yeah.
I think we should try and wrap this up. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Then I think maybe what we can do to wrap this up is let's maybe say one thing we're grateful for this year, seeing as we're kind of heading off to the end of the year. James, do you want to start us off?
Yo, now that I'm home, because like I didn't really see my family this year too much. Because it was like last year I was home for so long, so I sort of just had to stay in Cape Town for a bit. So my family and I never always had like a bit of family issues in high school and stuff, but we got past that, and yeah, definitely family and this podcast as well, because it's really given me amazing opportunity. Yeah,
cool. So
yeah,
definitely the podcast, but because we're kind of all in the podcast, and I'm sure all people for it, all three of us mentioned that one.
Yeah,
the podcast.
I'll maybe go next. I think for me, one thing I'm super grateful for is at the end of 2020, I had quite a rough time. Like right before I met you, Steph. And so I guess I'm really appreciative of the people that I have around me, the friends, especially, I mean, free thinking also played a big role. in kind of like supporting me through it. So I'm really appreciative for the people I have around me, friends, family, colleagues. Yeah, definitely mean a lot to me.
Can definitely see, the impact, the good impact COVID has had, because for all three of us to really focus on not the external material or non-essential, but for all of us, it's family, it's people. Most definitely, I never thought my relationship with my mom would be so important than this year. I've needed her a lot and that takes a lot to admit for someone who's almost too independent. But the people, friends, support, family, absolutely.
Yeah. That's amazing. Then I think, guys, I do know people have things to do before this day is over, so I think we will call it there today. Thank you so much, guys, for this final episode of the year.
That was very fun.
Wish you all a jolly festive season, and we have a super, super exciting lineup for next year. So please check in first week of January. We've got a lineup of very interesting and varied guests coming onto the show. So yeah, see you in 2022.
Catch y'all in 2022, guys. Peace.
Looking very forward to it.